St. Agnes is a very popular saint. She actually appears in the old Roman canon, that's the first Eucharistic prayer, as one of the 7 martyrs there. There are 7 ladies who come at the end of the second list. And that links us with the period in which the composition of that prayer took place, therefore going back right to the early church, showing how old that prayer is. Now, on this day, as it happens, the Pope blesses the lambs, from which eventually they'll take the wool to make what is called the pallium. And on the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, these will be given to the new archbishops of the world. An archbishop is a big bishop. He has suffragans under him. In Ireland, I think there are 4. One is here, your Archbishop Dermot. Then you've got in Cashel down there, Emily in Cashel. You've got another one there for that part of the south. You've got one for the extreme west, Tuam. And you've got one in Armagh. Of course, that goes back to St. Patrick. Now, these then have other bishops under them. Therefore, our own Bishop of Meath, that is Bishop Michael Smith, is under the Archbishop of Dublin. Now, all that to say that the Church is, as it were, a big family tree, and we're all interlinked, and we have to have that cohesion in which we don't create division, but unity. So learn that as you go through conversations. Don't throw stones, but try and heal. There's always a way of navigating. Some people enjoy this position. It doesn't do any good to the Church. If one understands what people are trying to say, quite often that's the answer. It's misinterpretation which leads to extremes. But I want to zoom in today to this particular saint, St. Agnes. It concerns us all, but it concerns in a particular way the little people. That's about half of the people here, young people, because where there are travellers, always there's a high proportion of little people, which is a great joy, the future of tomorrow. But the little people need to be protected. That applies to us all. I want to zoom into only one thing, because in one homily one can only take in one thing. But like a computer, we can't have too much information, otherwise we get clogged up. So the message I leave is this. St. Agnes, now the word in Greek, Agnes, means actually good and kind. But in Latin, agnus means lamb. And they've played on those 2 words close to each other. So if you see a picture of St. Agnes, you'll always find a lamb somewhere in the picture. But also she's described therefore as someone very good. Now she was only 12 or 13, and she was of a noble family, and interesting because she was beautiful and a good match. But she gave her purity to the Lord, and she was married only to Jesus, and she was not going to compromise. So they tried to force her, and they threatened her, and eventually she was martyred. I believe by stabbing her in the throat eventually. So she is a virgin martyr. That's 2 crowns in one. And she is invoked precisely for purity. Now this is what I want to zoom into. Purity. You, as a travelling community, are aware of the issue, because you're the main bulwark still in Ireland with regard to holy purity for the young. You do not let them mess around before marriage, and that is precious. And also, you are very good about not letting them frequent young men before they're married, even actually having contact with them. You're very good on limiting their contacts without being directly in the presence of the parents. Even things like texting, phoning, and all the rest of it is controlled, and that's a good thing, because it means they are pure when they get to marriage. They've only had the husband eventually, and therefore they grow into one man, having not known any other. And they live for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from the age of before 20 with only one man in the ideal travelling situation. And it has worked and produced very solid marriages of which you are the proof. Now I just want to zoom into the alternative. It concerns everyone. Now, why? Because of internet. Internet is a new way of committing adultery. I think you know what I mean. Right now, respectable men in particular are being unfaithful to the one that they're bound to in sacramental marriage through looking a lot at other women to whom they're not related or in any way connected, and in an impure way through looking at the images on internet. I think you know exactly what I mean. Now this is more frequent than people like to admit, and it's a nasty situation, because now, if you're not careful, a woman can't be sure that her husband is faithful, I mean mentally. It's not fair on the dignity of a woman. It's very ugly, actually, to know that a man needs someone else mentally and that his wife is not enough. But it also concerns the travelling community in another aspect. Bring that down a bit now, before marital age. You be very careful what gadgets you give to your little people, because they're not slow in learning how to eventually navigate into impure sites. Because once you open internet, straight away you're solicited into the margins and into opening things which are better not looked at. And this, therefore, is out there. As well as this other stuff, which is actually fairly recent, and it's also creating problems for the travelling community with regard to what used to be before well protected. Now, young men are finding their future wives not through meeting, but through encountering each other on Facebook. Now this is a whole dangerous realm, because people can present themselves, if you like, sell themselves falsely on Facebook. You're not meeting the real person. It's dangerous, and you don't know the full story. Now I would invite you parents, even grandparents, to watch over this and give your little people a clear message with regard to the dangers of Facebook, because also it's a whole marketplace of selling rubbish. I mean bad talk, what you call scandal. They're all full of bad news, and it destroys families and relationships. It's ugly, and you don't have to have that in your life. So warn the young people before they grow into it. You don't have to have all this stuff. Now, there are people now who are just incapable of talking to each other properly. Why? They're more interested in this thing in their hand. It's destroyed even ordinary communication and relationship. Encourage people, before they get contaminated, to learn the art of interrelationship. First of all, it starts with playing with normal toys and normal people, not gadgets, or even a screen which does the babysitting for you. And then, as they grow into education age, to know how to talk about anything to anyone. It's far more complete than everyone alone with his bubble. Alone and not looking at the person next to them. So I would advise you also to watch one other thing. Distinguish between two things, and I finish with this. With regard to holy purity, it's relevant and it's pretty important. It's this. One thing is permissible, the other, be careful. One thing is to select something that you actually want to learn about for good reasons, and to watch it calmly in a controlled way. Especially on, for instance, a recorded program on YouTube or something. It's quite another one to switch on at a random moment anything which happens to be on live television and passively to take it in. You're not in control of that. You don't know what's going to come up, and any young person there either doesn't know what's going to come up. You're taking everything on board. And year by year, there's less and less censorship going on, even in Ireland. Be careful. I just finished with this. When I was a student in Rome, I was living with all young people of my age from all countries, because we were all in the same house of the Norbertines in Rome, and there were about a third of them from America. And these Americans were actually quite surprised. They were coming from quite a strict formation in our houses in America to study in Rome, and they were taken aback at what? Coming to an officially Catholic country, Italy, close to the Pope, where around was a lot of liberty that they actually didn't have in America. I mean uncensored adverts and television. And they were quite taken aback, and they realised, okay, we've got to do it ourselves. We will not watch these things, we will put our eyes where we want to, even in public, looking only in a certain direction, because once you walk around and look around, it's all hitting you. Impurity, a form of virtual adultery, looking at other people's bodies. It's not nice. And once it's in there, it's stuck there. Because what comes in, stays in. So watch where you put your eyes. It applies to all, big ones and little ones alike.
Now when you go down to my mother's house, you'll see a lot of them. And you'll see more stuff that he made. That's his grandson.
Ah. So it's a small world, huh?
It is.